Well, hello everyone. I'm going to ask yourself a question. You know, I always ask a question before I start. Are you wearing a mask? I'm not talking about the mask that we all had to wear a couple of years ago with COVID being here. I'm talking about maybe an emotional mask, maybe a mask to cover up some pain. I'm asking you the mask that when we have these painted on smiles or blank expressions or exaggerated confidence. These are all masks. Yes. And what happens with masks? They slowly begin to crack, fall off. And these are what I'm going to be talking about today. These emotional symbols of metaphors that have probably been hiding behind for a very, very long time. And these masks have been very helpful to us. Or maybe not. Because what they did was they hide a lot of pain or avoid judgment. They helped you to survive through some really, really tough times. I'm going to be very honest. But what does a mask really protect you from? I want you to ask yourself, but if I had to look at this mask and what is it protecting me from? I want to ask yourself, is it maybe keeping you from your power, tapping in from your true power? And a couple of weeks ago, I did a video and it was talking about the narrative, the strong Black woman, the narrative of how we are meant to empower and the emotional suppression that we may do. And I put myself in that. The societal norms that we move into. I want you to really ask yourself this question. Why you connected here today, I believe is a sign. Because I believe that you're here for a reason. I want you to connect with other women. This is a platform that is branded for you to understand. And I want to emphasize that the way you communicate is your secret sauce. And when you're able to redefine your strength, you can begin to shift your narrative and have from being emotionally suppressed to be emotionally regulated. That's what I do. That's when you can begin to tap into your authentic power that I talk so much about. And when you begin to look and see how the pressures of you being strong all the time can lead you to emotional suppression, burnout, isolation. And by this, today, I want you to look at this. By breaking down these barriers, we're going to begin to go down a journey of how you can reclaim your voice, how you can own your voice, how you can speak truth, how you can speak unapologetically. And you can begin to empower your own voice and others. And as you look at this, I want you to take this myth of the strong Black woman, because sometimes it could be a double-edged sword. And I want you to look and see how you may be ignoring your pain, how you may be ignoring it, and you're not understanding how you can begin to move into your own power. So this is why I asked you the question when we first started. Who are you? And are you wearing a mask? Ask yourself that question, because sometimes strength is not about holding it all together, but it could be about letting it go and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in the moment. So, right now, as we're going forth, I want you to look and see how society, the expectations, or your fears, your pain, all of that, it may not be showing up as self love. And today I'm going to walk you through. Well, welcome to my channel. I'm Dr. Cheryl Clarke, and welcome. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, a communication coach, and the founder of Speak Your Power Now. I help people to discover their authentic voice and break through the barriers that may be holding them back to reach their potential, their true potential. And today I'm going to dive in to seeing how you can begin to look and see, are you wearing a mask? And how you can find that authentic voice and get the tools that you need to live authentically being yourself. Before I get started, I always say this. I'm not here to take your therapist, your coach, your mental health professional. But what I am here is to provide you with the practical tools you need, real world strategies that you can support yourself on your mental health journey. Now, if you're here for the very first time, I would say get a pen and pad out because I like to take notes because I like to see how we can begin to move in this area. So I'm going to talk about the mask. Why we wear a mask? Why do we wear a mask? Why? Let's all start with the why. Why you may be wearing a mask. See, when I talk about a mask, I'm really talking about, for this context, an emotional mask. Let's get that straight. So we're very clear about what type of mass I am speaking about. An emotional mass. Now, the emotional mass breaks down to defense mechanisms. Now, we've all heard this. We may or may not, but I'm going to break it down because this is what I do here on this channel. I break it down. A defense mechanism is standing in to protect ourselves and for any judgment, any pain. So we wear emotional masks. The defense mechanism is where you are consciously or unconsciously hiding your true emotions. And you present very differently, right? So, and oftentimes when we're protecting ourselves from the vulnerable situations or feeling judged or potential pain or anything like that, we tend to have these defense mechanisms that show up. And when this happens, we may find ourselves smiling when we're really angry or smiling when we're really sad. Or when fear shows up, we may not show any emotions at all. And we wear this and we conceal it with a facade. Or if the children are around, we can't show that we're upset or angry and we have to always keep it together. I was that lady. See that emotional mask, your primary goal is for the emotional mask is to avoid any negativity. Seriously. Any negativity, rejection, or anything, or showing that, you're just not going to do it. You're presenting like definitely outside of the social persona, even though you're suppressing all your genuine emotions. You are suppressing them. So when you're smiling and you appear that you're happy and you're feeling broken inside, acting like you're overly confident to hide any insecurities, being overly agreeable, to avoid any conflict, potentially to just so you won't potentially get any negativity. This is what we do. And then when emotional distress may come up, we bottle down these emotions even more and internalize. When we internalize it, this is when stress happens, anxiety happens, depression can happen. This is when we suppress it. And it becomes difficult for us to really connect with others. When we have a mask on, it hinders you from any genuine relationship or developing any genuine relationship. Because what happens is you have lack of any emotional transparency. You're not going to even show somebody when you are vulnerable, when you're hurting. I'm okay. When you know that you're really not okay. Maintaining this facade. That's all a mask is a facade. And what happens is you keep wearing a mask to fit in. You keep wearing a mask to avoid. You keep wearing a mask to be loved. You keep wearing a mask so you won't seem to be weak. But at what cost? Is the mask really, really serving you? It hides your authentic self. It hides you from actually being able to speak with powerfully. But it also hides us behind some of these defense mechanisms, because I know, just to share my little journey with you, of how I had a defense. I had a mask up. I was going to get you before you got me. So I used to practice how I was going to tell people off in the mirror. So I used to be one of those nice nasties. I was going to tell you off. Practicing these things of how you can still stand in your way, but I was going to tell you off. You know, the people that tell you off in that very nice kind of way, but then you're like, oh my God, did she just say that to me? And I had to realize that this is coming from a deep sense of pain, because I was emotionally abused from my stepfather growing up. So I had a defense mechanism up because I was not allowing that pain anymore. So I wore a mask. There was times in my life that if you were not going to show me, it just was a cycle. And as I stepped into my teenagehood and my more womanhood, it follows you. It just continues to follow you. And as you begin to move, you find you in survival mode with these defense mechanisms. Yes, I was running a business, but I found myself running a business out of necessity so I can bring home the money. I was raising my daughter, I was raising my children, so I needed to be strong, capable, but I was broken inside. Why am I sharing you my particular story? Because as I was managing my home, going to church on Sundays, going to family gatherings, I wasn't taking care of myself. I was adapting to how to make other people happy. But the truth is, I was just living, but I wasn't living fully as myself. And I would say for 20 odd years, I poured my heart and my soul into a business. And that was my mother's business, my mother's dream. And I was so glad so she can see that. And I was able to, when I got to a space where I found that I was just surviving and not just doing this out of duty, I began to explore my own passions. I wasn't in my own purpose. I was actually in a space where I wore a mask for many years. Now, what I was doing before, I think I endured a lot, but now I love what I'm doing because my voice, I found out, really mattered when you're passionate about something. So as you're connecting your emotional regulation together, you're going to find that as you begin to learn how to powerfully communicate truly without hurting anyone, without standing behind a mask, you can begin to learn that you don't have to protect yourself from anything because now you're learning how to be. So I want you, as I hope that story helped you, but I want you to look and see if you're even wearing a mask. And if you are, I want you to look and see about a couple of things where where that mask may be impacting you. If you're wearing a mask, it can, if emotional mask, as I'm talking about, does the mask create some sort of emotional isolation? So what does that mean? Do I build up walls in relationships? So I want you to look at this. Or are you wearing a mask? So if you're wearing a mask, some indicators are, if you're wearing a mask, do you feel isolated? Have you built up walls? Have you built up some walls? Just ask yourself, walls in relationship, Maybe walls in your conversation. Maybe you don't choose to speak. Maybe you don't feel like your words are even valid. What about your mental health impact? An emotional, if you have an emotional mask on, do you look at your mental health? Do you feel anxious? Look at your mental health. And this is what I'm talking about here. I want you to look at these couple of things when I talk about it. Anxiety, maybe burnout, maybe just exhausted, and you have no idea why. And this is another one, your communication. Now, here I'm going to talk a little in depth because this is where I live at. This is where I believe is a secret sauce at. Because I believe once you are liberated in your communication, you can begin to move in this. Have you ended up being passive, meaning that you just don't say anything? Maybe you have a passive way of speaking. You just let it just roll off your back and you don't say anything. Maybe you've built up a passive aggressive type of thing. You let it build, 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 and you may blow up. That's over time, passive aggressive. Maybe just outright aggressive. That was me. I'm coming out the gate and I'm going to let you know. It didn't matter if I hurt anyone. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. I had to learn how to be not aggressive. Do you avoid conversations, tough conversations? Ask yourself these questions. Do you hold back your true feelings? See, this is all in a state of communication. If you have an emotional mask on, do you look at yourself and you're not connected? That's the last one. Are you lacking connection? It's a defense mechanism. See, when you are truly speaking in your power, communicating in your power, where I teach you how to master your communication and really emotionally regulate, you learn how to authentically speak from a space and stop living this double life, this facade. Because you can do it. You can really connect. Now, if you find yourself with any of these areas, you may have an emotional mask on. You may be doing this and you don't even know why. Now we dealt with the why. We dealt with this is maybe your mask that you've had on. Now I want to show you how to remove it. Yes, Cheryl. What are you saying, Dr. Cheryl? I'm saying you can remove it. It's time to remove the mask. Now, with anything, removing something, it's going to take you in a space where you need to be. And this is an exercise. So in this moment, what I want you to do is I'm taking 5 steps. Now, what I want you to do in this moment is I want you to sit down in a comfortable space. So, and in the space, I want you to relax because maybe you didn't know that you were wearing a mask. Take a deep breath in and exhale it out. I have a PIES method, and it's pause, identify, explore, evaluate, and to have those solutions. We're going to recognize if you are wearing a mask. For example, I want you to close your eyes and I want you to just listen to this. Do you say that I'm fine when you're really not? That may be a space of avoiding. Do you say I'm okay and you're not? That may be a space where you don't know how to say I'm struggling. See, you may be that one that everything has to be perfect. You're working, that I'm strong. Maybe you are the one that scream and yell in that space. pause in the moment and find where you may be wearing a mask. And let me tell you how you know you're wearing a mask. I found this out for myself. If you're aggressive, you may be disempowering people and you don't even know it. If you're passive aggressive, you may just let everything just build up and build up until you blow up. And if you're really passive, you're just so agreeable to everyone. You don't really have an opinion. You just go with the flow because you don't want to ruffle the feathers. That may be you. So identify where you are. That's the first step. You're going to identify. Step number 1. Identify. So after I've done that with you, I want you to look and see if any of those things that I've said that you identify with. The second thing, you're going to understand your why, the why behind the mask, the root. Let's get into the root. Maybe it's the fear of rejection. Maybe it's the fear of failure, the fear of being judged. What is your why? Why? Why do I wear the mask? I want you to really get a relatable story here. Maybe it was something that I shared with you earlier. The vulnerability here is that you need to begin to look. You need to begin to see. Behind the mask, maybe you may feel like, you didn't want to feel dumb. So, you told people off before they got to you. Whatever that looks like for you. Now, the stepping down, you may have did these first 2 steps. And maybe you need to pause right here for the video. Because the second one really is going to require you to practice emotional mastery. And this is where we are looking at who you are. There's some ground exercises here to stay present, stay authentic, even through tough conversations. This is where you're going to begin to breathe in and breathe out. Manage that anxiety when it starts to happen. Manage that frustration when it starts to seep up. But I need you to embrace that emotion. See, step 3 is important. This is where mastery happens in the step 3. Mastery happens here because you're going to practice embracing emotional regulation. That means if you're feeling angry, move with it. Don't suppress it. Let it come up, but do not hurt anyone in it. If you need a moment to go do breath work, you need a moment to take your breath before saying anything. You need to begin to move with that. Step 4, communicate authentically. Now, what is this communication of being authentic? This is a technique where without the mask is who you are. And it's always in a space of I. I feel that I own my emotions. Speaking from a space where there's no ego, because ego versus purpose is the framework of how you look in a space where I feel hurt when, instead of masking it, screaming with anger, sarcasm. Sarcasm is another one. When you are sarcastic to someone, and sometimes people are just sarcastic by nature, but sometimes you need to own it when it hurts you. You need to own it. Like my husband is he is a sarcastic type of guy, but he knows now there's certain things that he just can't say. And he won't say them because he knows it's hurtful. So the step 4, this is step 3. So step 4, number 4, this is where now you're going to communicate authentically. Communicate authentically. Because as you authentically communicate, the sarcasm goes out the window. And then how you can begin to, number 5, share your story. People need to know what you've been through. Share your story in a vulnerable way. Now, this is what I mean by share your story. Without hiding behind any narratives, share your experience, right? But actually share your experience that someone can learn from what you're saying. Speak from a space of authenticity so they can take a moment. I was talking to a father and son the other day. They was having a conversation, and the son came to the father for some advice, for financial advice. And the father was so gentle with him, and he said, son, you've been going through this struggle with your finances for some time now. And he said, I struggled in my 20s with my finances as well. That's why I'm great at it now. I don't want you to think that I was always good at my finances. He said, really, Dad? He said, yeah. He said, I had to do bankruptcy some time ago. He said, really, Dad? He said, but I'm proud of you. You've been doing what you need to do. He said, let's come over and I'm going to show you some techniques you can do to get your finances back in order. That was powerful. That was powerful. He didn't have to demean his son. He told his own story. He stood in his own truth. I thought that was powerful. See, the emotional thing about that is that's the practical tools that you could do. Be emotionally regulated in that moment. Stay grounded while speaking. Being able to say that to someone, and you can do that too. That's emotional mastery, self-expression, without you tearing someone down. They may have made a mistake, but through your journey, they cannot feel judged or rejected when they came to you for something. And if you're not the person to affirm them, then move them to someone that can. Because I want to reiterate here, removing the emotional mask will bring you freedom. When you remove your mask, it gives you permission to move freely. And you could be able to connect with someone authentically and not have this facade up and the pain that you've probably been through. It keeps you from your true power. So currently, you may be navigating with an emotional mask on. You may be currently doing that right now. This is where you get to learn your triggers. You get to understand what does it look like to be vulnerable? What does it look like to actually share your story? I want you to look at this as you unmask yourself, or the process of unmasking yourself. I want you to say, as I unmask myself, I am powerful. As I unmask myself, I speak my truth. As I unmask myself, I move with courage. As I unmask myself, I am developing my authentic voice. That's it. And you can continue to say these things or say it another kind of way. But if this spoke to you, share, subscribe, and go and join the Power of Her Voice circle. Learn how you can begin to emotionally regulate, master your communication, and move powerfully in your voice. And as you do this, remember that you can open up a new world to yourself. You can open up and begin to move powerfully in this life. Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. Remember that your life is defined by one single moment. One single moment. Let that moment be today. Peace and have a great one. And until next time.